So can you use a trust to pass your wealth and not use a will? And if you can, should you?
Well, and I think that's a great question, because a lot of times people who are touting trust will say, well, look, you want to avoid the horrors of probate. I mean, like, probate is this horrible thing. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's public. And it really depends on the jurisdiction in which you live. In Georgia, probate is not a bad thing. Probate is not particularly expensive. It's not particularly time consuming. I had a hearing with a probate judge here in Lowndes County yesterday. It was a 5-minute process, and it would have been shorter probably had the Zoom been working correctly. And now in Florida, it is more expensive. It is more time consuming. And the process of probating someone's will, which, when people are trying to say you need a trust because you don't want to probate your will, it's this horrible thing. Well, probate can be kind of a helpful process, because it helps bring out it helps people who have a particular interest in the person who died, their assets, or it lets your children and your loved ones come before the court and say, hey, look, I don't think this is really what mom and daddy wanted. They had always intended to leave us the business. They had 15 wills over a series of years. They entered into one late in life, which left everything to the neighbor lady that was taking care of them. Probate gives your heirs the opportunity to come in and say, hey, look, I don't think this was what mom and daddy wanted. But for most people, if you have a will where you're leaving everything to your spouse and your children, you get everybody to sign on as part of the process. Everybody says, yeah, this is what mom and dad wanted. And it's not that bad of a process, not that expensive. In Florida, it's probably a little more expensive than Georgia. Florida is a little more stringent in requiring an executor or the person that's named in the will to produce assets or lists of assets. We call it inventory of what the decedent had. In Georgia, a lot of that stuff can be waived. So I would say there's a lot of good reasons, as Caroline was saying, about why should you have a trust. It may not be tax reasons. It may be family reasons. But I would say that probate avoidance is probably not something that should be tipping the scale, because typically speaking, not that expensive, not that time consuming, can be a healthy process to let people who may have concerns an opportunity to raise them. But then, even if you have a trust, and the trust can be a way to avoid probate, if you got everything into the trust before you died, a lot of the times you have a will and you have a trust. So even if you have a revocable trust, which says divide all my assets between my 2 loving children, you're still going to have a will if the assets weren't all put into the trust before you died, to get those assets into the trust after your death. So you're still going through probate. So that's a long-winded way of saying there are great reasons to have a trust. Probate avoidance may not be the number one. And it's not the boogeyman that everyone, or that a lot of people make it out to be.